Now, to put this in layman terms, simplified, most, well, if not most, many of the delays in getting started on dealing with this gusher were caused by the very overregulation that they're saying we need more of. Paperwork, now we had to get past the Jones Act, and we didn't like the paperwork filed by the Netherlands and so forth. Bobby Jindal wanted to build the sandberms down, needed paperwork for this, all of these regulations. Right now, there are 33 high-tech oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, as we speak. And they will all go away if this moratorium is permanent. They are not going to sit there and take it into shorts and go out of business, despite Mr. Obama's efforts. They will go elsewhere. And our prices for energy are going to skyrocket. Stansberry and Associates puts it as an investment research outfit. And they put out last week, while I happened to be very, very, very soon to when I was coming back, it's June 14th, a following piece. Let's talk about BP. Some of the world's top value investors have begun to buy shares of BP based on their estimates of what the Gulf cleanup will cost compared to the enormous cash flows of the company, roughly $30 billion annually pre-tax. Our friend Whitney Tilson, one of the most respected value-oriented hedge fund managers in New York, even says that BP won't have to cut its dividend. We doubt that Tilson's correct about the dividend, but he makes a few excellent points about the scope of the disaster in contrast to the media hype about the spill. Now, I want you to be clearly understanding of what I'm doing here. This is not to minimize it. This is once again to provide you evidence that the media reporting this and this administration dealing with it is hyping this to a crisis way beyond its proportion. If we lose rationality on this, we're not going to properly deal with this. Panic never leads to an effective result. It is a horrible accident, but you don't have to clean up the entire Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is huge, 1,615,000 square miles, containing 660, now listen to this, 660 quadrillion gallons of water. There's no way of conceiving of that amount of anything. 660 quadrillion gallons of water. Let's compare this to the amount of oil Deepwater Horizon has been leaking. Most estimates are in the 12,000 to 20,000 barrels per day range. So let's take the high end, and let's also assume that this continues until mid-August, meaning 4 months since the accident. Let's also assume that the cap captures no oil. The latest reports are that it may be capturing some of it, but let's be conservative. Let's say the whole effort fails. So we have 20,000 barrels a day times 120 days times 42 gallons per barrel equals 100.8 million gallons of oil released by August. Are you with me on this? 100.8 million gallons of oil released, assuming none of it's captured, through mid-August. 108 million divided by 660 quadrillion is 1 gallon of oil for every 6.6 billion gallons of water in the Gulf. That is the equivalent of roughly 1/1,000,000th of an ounce of oil in a typical bathtub full of water. I'm going to run through this again. We're going to assume here that no oil is collected and the spill is 20,000 barrels a day, and it may be more than that, but use the numbers that we've been given, 20,000 barrels a day, none of it collected through August. There are 660 quadrillion gallons of water in the Gulf of Mexico. So 20,000 barrels of oil a day times 120 days, that's 4 months since the spill, times 42 gallons, that's how many gallons are in a barrel. That equals 100.8 million gallons of oil released. And that's not good. Don't misunderstand. And wherever it ends up, on the Gulf, on shore, it ain't good. It's not good. Don't misunderstand me. 108 million gallons of oil divided by 660 quadrillion gallons of water is 1 gallon of oil for every 6.6 billion gallons of water in the Gulf. 1 gallon of oil, not barrel, 1 gallon of oil for every 6.6 billion gallons of water in the Gulf. That is, to bring this down to a size that everybody can understand, that is the equivalent of roughly 1/1,000,000th of an ounce of oil in a typical bathtub full of water. That's how, compared to now, the perspective here is, as people are saying, it's going to take forever to clean up the Gulf of Mexico. It will not. Most of the Gulf of Mexico, the water volume, will not be affected. In fact, a lot of the oil that they say, these plumes that they're talking about beneath the surface 100 miles away and 24 miles long, at some point is going to be dissipated. It's going to be eaten alive. And they're going to cap this by August anyway with these relief wells. Now, I only mention this because we see the Gulf of Mexico on a flat map. And we see, in relation to the country, a relatively small body of water. We don't see the depth. We have no concept of the amount of water in the Gulf. But we see the video of all the oil spewing out of that rig, out of that blown hole. We see that all the time. And we see in that TV frame, 90% of what we see is oil and 10% is water. And all of this creates a mental image that the total destruction of the Gulf of Mexico and every life form in it is either imminent or has already happened. It is the equivalent, through August, not today, through August at 20,000 barrels a day of having 1/1,000,000th of an ounce of oil in your full bathtub. I would say you get in the bath, you get in a bathtub with 1/millionth of an ounce of oil in there. The time you soap yourself up and do all you do to the water, the oil's going to be taken care of, along with the oils on your body that will wash off as well. Now, this is not, do not misunderstand, this is not to minimize all the damage that's being done to people who make their living offshore. That's real, and it's destructive, and this leak needs to get fixed as quickly as possible. But I always strive to have everybody try to keep rational, be rational in these circumstances. This is what's been missing in the global warming argument. If you take a look at the proportions I just gave you and transfer it to the whole global warming argument, the Earth's climate, the atmosphere, including the oceans, the landmass, is so complex and so massive, we can't conceive of it. And yet they had people believing that driving around a General Motors Yukon SUV was going to destroy it. Or lighting a charcoal barbecue pit. They had people believing, just as they have people believing that drilling for oil offshore is going to destroy the Gulf of Mexico. It will not. And we have a president who's going to put a moratorium on all drilling, which is obscene. It is insane. It is absurd. We have 33 rigs out there. And he's going to effectively end up putting them all out of business. Just as if an airplane crashed and we shut down the airline industry. All because of an imagined volume of destruction which will not happen. And this spill, to this date, smaller than the Mexican spill in 1980. All right, just a couple more statistics here, and I promise we'll get to the phones. I really, really mean it. Friend of mine, Lord Russo, sends me a note with an interesting observation. Now that British Petroleum, it's actually BP. British Petroleum is no longer the name of it. Now that BP is going to turn over $20 billion to the regime in escrow money. Well, that's great news because now the Obama regime can be blamed for all the delays and bureaucracy that'll be inflicted on the people in the Gulf. It's this $20 billion in escrow money that is ostensibly to be used to help people who are losing their livelihoods because of the oil spill. But guess who's in charge of doling it out now? The regime. Ha! So wait till you people in the Gulf start trying to get your share of the 20 bill. You got to go through the regime to get it.